everybody, and welcome to episode number 7 of the Let's Learn Master of Puppets guitar series. Today we will be covering every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression, and a full detailed musical analysis of Orion by Metallica. So let us explore this beloved celestial body. From Rigel to Beetlejuice to Burton, let's figure all this out. It's no shock to longtime Metallica fans that bassist Cliff Burton was the primary influence behind this track. Now, even though this is a guitar analysis, I'll be including many elements of the bass guitar that are pertinent to the composition, or should I say, Burtonant to the composition. The structure of Orion doesn't quite follow the conventions of a typical song, but it is held together by 3 riffs that make up its outer layer. And by outer layer, I mean the sections that begin the song and the sections that end the song. The inner layer of Orion is characterized by a very lengthy bridge section centered around Cliff Burton's bass line. This bass line repeats a whopping 26 times in its original form, with some fills in between. But that's not all. The progression rolls through after the fact with some more variations to bring us to a total of a whopping 30 times through the entire chord progression. That's a lot of times through one chord progression. This means that in order to not bore the audience to tears and ensure a proper ascension to the constellation of Orion, we must sprinkle guitar lines and melodies over the top that keep us emotionally invested through this bridge section. And I think this one does just that. Anyway, enough blabbering of things to come. Let's start at Orion's feet and build this myth up from a groundswell of Cliff Burton's secret sauce. Now, while it's no secret that Cliff Burton came up with this idea, it is a bit of a mystery as to what this sound actually is. From what I've read, it appears to be one of 3 things. Number 1, a bass guitar with distortion through a rotary speaker. Now, a rotary speaker is a speaker that spins around. It literally spins the air pressure within it to make it seem like the sound is moving. Because guess what? It actually is. Number 2, it could be an organ with distortion. You know, one of those keyboards. I'm not talking about that kind of organ. Get your mind out of the gutter. But yes, a keyboard organ with distortion through a rotary speaker. So you can do a lot of stuff with just distortion, by the way. Or number 3, I'm thinking it might be a combination of the 2. Production tricks like this are what make these songs so special. I love to be kept guessing as to what a particular sound might be at any given time. The chord structure of this introduction is made up of 3 different chords, and they just cycle through many times. I'll go over that in a little bit. But we're starting on an E minor, like this. It's really just a 3-note chord, an E, an E, and a G. So we don't even have the B there, but we can safely assume that this is E minor. It sounds like E minor, for cripe's sake. And then we go to a B minor. Okay, that's the minor 5 chord within the key of E minor. And then we go to B major. That's the major 5 chord. Now, it's no exaggeration here that this is indeed a major harmonic move. Yes, major in both senses of the word. It's very significant because the harmonic move that's being made literally comes from the harmonic minor scale. The only note that changes between B minor and B major is the D. So in a B minor, it's a D natural. In a B major, it's a D sharp. Now, those are both the 7th scale degree of the E minor scale. Okay, now the E natural minor scale is made up of these notes: E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E. The harmonic minor scale is made up of these notes: E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D sharp, E, giving a little bit of a Middle Eastern flavor at the end there, with that raised 7th scale degree, which, by the way, is a D sharp or the 3rd of a B major chord. Now, this intro goes a total of 8 times, with different elements being introduced during the process. The first time through the progression, it's extremely quiet. and fades in about halfway through the progression. I would suggest turning your speakers up to max and leaving it there for the duration of the song. The second time gets a little bit louder, and it's the first full pass through the chord progression, okay? So you actually get to hear it, even though you still have to have your speakers up to maximum in order to really hear it. The third time it gets even louder and actually hits the volume that it's going to stay at part of the way through. The fourth time, the drums fade in, just like the organ faded in, well, or whatever, the bass plus the organ. The drums are now fading in. So Cliff Burton is fading in, and then Lars Ulrich is fading in with his drum set. The last 4 times through this riff, continue that drum fade in until everything is at the full volume that it's going to be for the rest of the song, which then introduces this guitar riff that starts off the entire thing. This riff follows the intro progression, but adds a little bit of rhythmic chugginess to move it along. We start this riff off on an octave E and then move to a minor third interval as we chug the open E in between, like this. Check it out, ready? Now that minor third interval then changes into a major second interval, E to F sharp, from E to G. So if we start that from the beginning, octave, minor third, major second, minor third, before it actually goes to the next chord. The next chord moves to a B minor shape, but it starts off with a D and an F sharp up top, like this. That's almost like hitting a D major chord, but as we know, or maybe we don't know this, D major is actually a harmonic extension of B, but we're going down to B like this. So it's B minor, you want to make sure you do that double at the end, and then we just change the shape, just one note like this. That turns it into a B major chord. So that's the same progression as the intro, just with heavy chuggy guitars. One more time, slow, octave, third, second, third, B minor, B major, and then it repeats once again. Boom. Self-explanatory, nothing to see here. Now that's just a straight 8th note rhythm all the way through. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 8th notes the entire way with a little bit of syncopation on beat 2. Otherwise it's pretty downbeat heavy. Another very interesting point lies within Cliff Burton's bass line. He actually takes the 3rd chord of the progression and makes it a second inversion major chord, or a B major chord over an F sharp. And that sounds like this. Ready? Pretty cool sound, right? Almost sounds like a suspended chord. Well, that's because that's the nature of the second inversion. It's very rocky and gritty. Instead of being in root position, we're playing it with the F sharp on the bottom. So all in all, Cliff's playing something like this. E minor. That's an E. So root position, B minor with a root, and then an F sharp on the bottom once it hits the B major. This same riff goes on to repeat 6 total times, but with a slight variation on the 4th time around. A little 16th note added in there for some extra Metallica flavor. Now let's move on to the next section, which I will dub Orion's Kneecaps. The rhythm remains in 4, like this. 1 and a 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and a 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and a 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty basic, right? Just has some 16th notes in there. The same syncopation that we had earlier, but we have a lot more held out notes. Now the chords are pretty easy. It's A, E, C. And then in reverse order, C, E, A. Alright, now what key exactly are we in? Now on the surface it might seem like we're still in the key of E minor. After all, the first section we played was in that key the entire time, and we're also starting on an E chug like that, okay? So we could assume that we're in E minor, correct? Wrong. Cliff Burton's bass line that is played on top as a little solo or a lead is actually in the key of A minor. So, with that said, the context of these chords is now like this. A minor will be the 1 now. E will be the 5, and C is going to be the flat 3rd, or, even better yet, the relative major to A minor, okay? C is a harmonic extension of A as well, so any notes you have with A minor can be built further to create a C major. So, 1, 5, flat 3, and of course reverse order. Flat 3, 5, 1. Pretty easy, although we have a modulation already without even realizing it. Like I said before, these held out A and C power chords leave room for Cliff Burton's bass line on the top, actually. The bass line hinges on the perfect fifth of our key center, which is now A minor. So that's going to be an E, the perfect fifth of A. So we have E, A, B, C. Look it out. F, E, C, B, A. Look at how we always go back to E in between. We can call this a pedal tone. Cliff is not playing an E in the melodic sense. He is playing an E on the bottom here, but in the melodic sense he's playing A, B, C. Now if you recall, the chord progression is A, E, C instead, right? So Cliff Burton is once again inverting the chord. He's putting a B on the bottom of an E, and he continues to do this through the rest of the song as well. Now a couple things to note about this. We're using 16th notes to fill in the void that those held out power chords left. Okay, so Cliff Burton is performing the function of filling the void of empty space, while the other two members are leaving the empty space. So it's just brilliantly, brilliantly well done. And then of course we go to an F, which is just a flat 6, and eventually we do hit an F power chord proper within this riff, keeping it within A minor, of course. This bit goes 4 times total, so it's worth noting what Lars does on the drums to progress this entire section. He begins by just hitting the crash cymbal on those chord changes. And then he progresses to this slower groove, which is something akin to what we'd hear on The Thing That Should Not Be. Kind of creepy crawly if you ask me. Let's progress onward to the top, the very top of Orion's kneecaps. The riff now becomes far more rhythmic, following along with what Cliff Burton was doing just prior with the bass line. The guitar is now adding a little bit more spunk into it as well. Now we're still in 4/4 timing, but there's a little bit of rhythmic trickery going on with Lars on the drums. I'll embellish upon that statement after we run through the riff itself. So we start with a pickup on the and of beat 2. So it's going to sound like this. And 3 and 4 in. And 3 and 4 in. And yes, it is a downbeat heavy riff like that. And 3 and 4 in. Going from E to F back to E. Now it doesn't feel that way on the recording, but I'll get there in just a second. So we continue on with the riff just like it was before. Just with some more rhythmic chugs in between. Same chords and everything, like this. 3 and 4 in. 3 and 4 in. 3 and 4 in. The same riff goes through twice, so all is well, correct? Wrong. Listen to the way that the drums and the guitar interact from the first half to the second half. That first half feels exactly how it should and how I described it before with the 3 and 4 and like this. 3 and 4 and, just like that. 3 and 4 and. See how my head is hitting the ground every single time? Done 3 and 4 and, 3 and 4 and, 3 and 4 and. That's the feeling that you have on the first half, so all is well in that department. But the second half of this riff feels completely different because Lars is skipping a beat toward the end of the progression. It almost feels as if he's creating a measure of 5/8 right at the ending. And let me show you how that kind of works. So with those drum hits, boom boom bow, boom bow, boom boom bow, boom 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 bow, boom boom. Right at the end there, that's where that 5/8 measure comes in. Now, if you want to subdivide this, you can think of it as like this. 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 boom, and that's really the subdivision that's happening. So 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5. So your entire focus shifts as the downbeat is skipped. You see that? We're skipping a beat, completely flipping the groove on its head. You're putting the bass drum on the upbeat of that measure, and you're also putting the snare drum on the upbeat of that measure as well, if you're going to keep it in 4/4. But I think because of the way it's played, we're putting a measure of 5/8 into here. Now, okay, it is in 4/4, but we can also subdivide it this way to feel it a little bit better. 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5. Lars being Mike Portnoy before Mike Portnoy was even Mike Portnoy. Can you believe that? Now that riff goes on to repeat 4 full times, so with the time change and everything like that, or time change I should say. And then we come back to the first riff, which is repeated a couple times by itself. We go through this riff 2 times, nothing to see here. We're just going through twice. Same rhythm and everything. Make sure you get those intervals right. Oh yeah, Orion, yeah. The next 2 times on that riff, we get a little melodic line that comes in over the top. Let's check that out. A relatively simple scale riff with hammer-ons and pull-offs that outlines the same chords we've become familiar with. And it comes in on beat 2. Ready? 1, 2. So that's the first time around. Let's explain what's going on there. We start on the 4th fret of the D string. That's an F sharp. So we're starting on the 2nd scale degree, hammering into the flatted 3rd and coming back. And then picking the root note on the A string 7th fret. So 1, and you do that twice in a row. We come back to do that again another 2 times like this, and then we hit this. Very nice melodic line outlining almost a D major, but we're on a B minor. So remember, D major and B minor are harmonic extensions of one another. It looks like we're playing a straight up D chord, D and F sharp, but we're on a B minor. Now that second one is going to the 6th fret. That's hitting that D sharp that I talked about before, the harmonic minor scale, the raised 7th scale degree to make that B major chord happen within our progression. And then we're going up like this. Actually a lot of dissonance there, a lot of tension. We're hitting what would be a sharp 5th, alright, or a flatted 6th. But here I'm going to call it a sharp 5th, resolving back down to the normal 5th. And that's basically giving you an augmented chord. See how that sounds? Sounds kind of crazy. You only hear that in West Side Story, stuff like that. That's all you're going to hear that in. The second time around brings us an incredibly subtle difference. Let's see if you can spot it. There it is. And you know what's cool? It goes right along with the rhythm guitar that changes on the 4th time around. Remember when I talked about that the first time? Well, that actually has a clear function here. We are going along with... It's the same exact rhythm, but in the lead part. So that's an incredibly good compositional move on Kirk's part and or James, whoever came up with it. Right after that, we have to hold out the E to make way for another guitar coming in over the top. If you listen to the recording, this E that we hold out bleeds into the guitar solo. It almost makes it sound like a harmony. Now the solo continues beyond that, but let's just go over the first two sections that are still within E minor. The next section changes key entirely. We're playing an ascending lick, sliding up the D string, starting on F sharp, just going up the E natural minor scale like this. In that exact rhythm, make sure you double up on that last note. One more time. F sharp, G, A, B, skip to D. So we're kind of doing a pentatonic scale, but you know, we're skipping over just the flatted 6, but we're hitting the F sharp there. And then we come over to this, a little bit of pentatonic action. But no longer pentatonic on that last one, right? So we're on the 14th fret going 14, 12, and then a big bend on the 14th fret, whole step. Hammering in to the 12th fret, 11th, and then down to the 12th fret once again. Now the interesting part about this is we're ending on a D natural, and we never go to a D sharp like we do in the rhythm. A D sharp. Sorry, I had a little, if you know what I'm saying. One more time. We continue with even more E minor action on the second part. Right out of that previous lick, we're coming to the 12th fret of the G and going to the 15th fret of the B. That's a perfect 5th interval, creating an E minor 7th. Ready? Once again. And then here, a little bent double stop. So we're bending the 14th fret of the G, whole step, and keeping the 15th fret of the B static. Okay? Very nice. It almost reminds me of Nothing Else Matters before it actually happened, right? A lot of that going on. And then come up 14, 12, 15th fret bend, whole step, with a little gallop picking. Boom, bada, boom, bada, boom. You hear that? Make sure you got your horse in the yard. Don't let it escape the farm and gallop away with all of your treasures. Then we got to go like this. 15th on the B to 12 on the E. Alright, so pretty easy so far. A lot of pentatonic stuff coming up. The last part is characterized by a repetitive 3-note run that goes like this. I'll play it slow. So let's go over that first. We're starting on the 15th fret, going 15, 14, 12. Alright, and you want to alternate pick these at first. Watch. At least for that long, and then the last set you're going to pull off. Alright, so we're basically going through 16th notes and then adding in a fast, I guess it would be a 16th note triplet at the end. So, and you got to do that twice. But at the speed of the song, it's going to sound like this. Just like that, alright, in perfect Kirk Hammett fashion. A little bit sloppy, but it gets the job done. So one more time, slow. And then at the end, you got to play that 17th fret bend right on those downbeats. Boom, boom, boom. 3 nice big ones to get us away from that nasty horse. The next half of the solo introduces a unique rhythm section in the key of B minor this time, modulating hard from E minor. Let's hear both of those parts together as we approach Orion's thigh gap. That new rhythm guitar starts on a descending pattern on B. So we're starting on the 2nd fret of the A string power chord, just 2 fingers like this, and with that little descending line happening on the D string. So we're going 4, 4, 4, 3, 2 in terms of frets. Now note-wise, we're just going from the 5th to the tritone to the perfect 4th. Alright, so 5, tritone 4, and then we got to go down to an A, which this will actually be an A6 chord, so not a power chord. Alright, so we're hitting the open A string and the 4th fret of the D. So that's A and F sharp, that's a major 6th interval. And we do the same exact descending chromatic thing on the D string like that, but here we're having the major 6, the flat 6, hold on that for a while, that's pretty dissonant, and then down to the 5th. So we eventually do resolve to an A power chord. Then we got to go to an F sharp chord, 2nd fret of the E string, but this time we're going to do a 3-note power chord because we have to keep the D string involved for the descending notes going chromatically. So, like this. But you're not always going to pick every single note of the power chord. So we're actually going to play the upper structure toward the end, leaving the lower structure for the beginning. Watch again. See how I'm going right up to the A and D string at the end instead of including the E? So we're going like this, with a major 7th on the top after we hit an octave. So we're hitting an octave first, and then a major 7. Wow, an F sharp major 7 in a Metallica song. Never thought I'd see that. And then to an F sharp 7 with a flatted 7. That's a little more, I guess, fitting because it's a bluesy note and Metallica tends to get very bluesy. So one more time. And you want to make sure you're really accenting the very last chord that you play. You want to let it splat on the screen. Splat. We come back around, but instead of repeating the B twice like we did the first time, we're going to keep descending down, only play it once. Watch. B, tritone 4, and then 6, flat 6, 5, and then here to the F sharp. And then the very last one is going to be an E, but like this. It's actually starting with an E with a 9th on the top of it, which is kind of crazy. We're playing all the same notes just like we did, alright? So that F sharp is a 9th, going down to a flatted 9th. That's just like the beginning of Battery, by the way. But we're sneaking it in there oh so nicely. And it sounds pretty bad in this context if we don't move from it quickly, alright? So we got to move from it quickly. And then we resolve right to E, which is of course the root note, and we hold on to it into the distance, okay? And make way for the bridge section that we're going to hit. Let's check out what the guitar line on the top is doing in the lead. Let me play it slow for you first. Here's the lick. So we're now in the key of B minor, a lot of pentatonic stuff. We also have some arpeggios as well. We're starting on the 12th fret of the E string, the high E like this. And we're going to go like this. 2 straight bends, and then a bend release with a pull off to the 10th fret. And then 12, 10 from B to E. So this is just straight up B minor pentatonic. And then you kind of do a similar thing again, but with a different rhythm. We continue with this B minor arpeggio ascending, but always coming back down. It's a 3-note arpeggio. Start on the 12th fret of the B string, use your middle finger. 10th fret of the E, use your pointer finger. 14th fret of the E, use your pinky like this. And basically you're going to go like this, all alternate picking. Wow, that's kind of technical for Kirk Hammett, but we're doing it right here. And you're basically just going root 3rd and 5th. 1, flat 3, 5. And you play it a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just 5 times. Now that's an odd number. Pentatonic. There's a lot of pentagrams, a lot of demonic energy going on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then a big bend at the end. But then you also release it. So we're playing that B, that's going up to the root note, and then coming down to the 15th, which is the flatted 7th. Now that's all pretty easy to explain, but this next lick gets a little trickier. This is one of those moments where Kirk decides to play an E minor scale on top of a B minor progression. So this actually creates a B Phrygian mode, okay? And let me explain what that means. We're starting off on the 14th fret up here, and we're going 14, 15, 17. We're actually outlining the 5th, flat 6, and flat 7th. And and then we do a series of hammer-ons, okay? And just hammer-ons, and we're going sliding down as we move. You see that? We have to slide down each time. Hammer, slide, hammer, slide, hammer, slide. And it has to be an instant slide. You can't be slacking on it. And eventually we end on that second fret of the E string. But check out that. 14, 15, 12, 14, 10, 12, 8, 10, 7, 8, 5, 7, 3, 5, 2, 3, 2. Okay, pretty easy. Now the notes that are being played are F sharp G, E F sharp. That checks out. D E. All right, now C. That's a flatted 2 in the key of B minor, which creates a Phrygian mode. Now it sounds pretty nasty when you play a B and a C together. That's because it does. It's a flatted ninth interval. And goddamn does it sound like a putrid pile of trash. But when you play it quickly, it sounds fine. So watch this. It all sounds fine. It almost just sounds like you're playing an E minor scale but on top of a B minor. But because everything moves around so much, you don't really notice that it's that dissonant, because it's not like he's holding on to it, you know, like, I'm Kirk Hammett, I'm playing a flatted ninth because I'm an idiot. He's not doing that, alright? So he's being a totally rational human being. But we gotta keep on going, right? So we're going from B to C, A to B, flat 7, back again, G to A. Once again, we're coming back up to the high octave, but in the low octave. And then we go like this. And we resolve on the perfect fifth of the B minor chord. The final lick just continues on right from those hammer-ons, and we actually have a pull-off to continue on from the hammer-ons. How ironically ironic. It's crazy how what these guys do. A bunch of ragamuffins, scallywags, just like Cliff Burton was. Now check this out. We start on the 3rd fret of the high E string like this, resolving an E, and then 3rd fret on the B, 4th on the G, back up. This is all B minor arpeggio. Then bend, release, and then right back down to that G. Alright, that's going to be your low point. You gotta make sure you get all the way down there within that amount of time, and then a little hammer on onto an E from the 3rd to the 5th. You do that 2nd, 3rd fret just like you did on the high E string. That is a C sharp. Alright, so that does exist within the B minor scale, so that's totally cool, but we're playing an E chord on the bottom, which basically creates a Mixolydian sound. Or if you want to call it E minor, it's a Dorian sound. So it's a matter of whatever third you have on top of the E chord. That's with an E major. This is with an E minor. You hear the difference there? E major. Sounds pretty cool. E minor. So just keep that in mind as you're playing this. Sometimes these notes fly by so fast, you don't even realize there's some advanced theoretical knowledge to be had here. After those couple of notes, we hit the final section. It's a trill. That's all it is, not even a section. This is the last measure of that section. And we go like this. That's just open 2 with the pointer finger and just doing a repetitive succession of a secession. What are we, the South during the Civil War? We're going like this. A repetitive succession of trills. Or hammer-ons and pull-offs, I should say. Going from open to the 2nd fret, B to C sharp, which is open 2, basically resolving to the root note, which then prepares us to hit this next riff, which is a heavy version of the rhythm guitar that we've been hearing this entire time. Check this out. We're using all the same chord shapes, but we're just playing it more slowly to go along with Lars's very accentuated and exaggerated rhythms, right? With the crash cymbal and the bass drum. We're going like this. Dun, 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 dun. Much heavier. Dig in. And that last one, you want to just have those last 2 notes hanging out, because that's going to be the heavy shit that you're going to get. And then right into an E chord like this. It's all the same, you just want to be a lot heavier with your right hand. Now let's talk about the functionality of what's happening here, the theoretical notions that we will be assimilating into our lives here. So we have a B minor, okay, that's a 1 chord. Then you have an A, that's the flat 7th chord. And then we have F sharp, that's the 5 chord, into E, which would be the 4 chord in B minor. But in this particular case, because we're transitioning into another section, this is going to be seen as the flat 7th to our new key center that will occupy the entire bridge, which is going to be, you guessed it, F sharp minor. Now this is probably the moment that everybody's been waiting for. The bridge section, the iconic bridge of Orion, with Cliff Burton's bass line setting the tone. Now, like I said before, this bass line and progression goes around a total of 30 times. So I'm going to divide this up into different subgroups, maybe like 4 times per, 8 times per, just to make it a little easier to follow. The first section goes along with the first 4 times through the progression, okay? So that's what we're going to be covering at that point. So with that said, let's get right up into Orion's belt. Kind of smells like cabbage up in this belt. Now, as you can see, we have hit a very radical shift in the song, in the composition as a whole. We're no longer in the timing of 4/4. In fact, we are now in 6/8 timing, with a very nice bass progression going and setting the tone for what's about to come. Now let's take a look at what Cliff is playing in that so that we can make some sense out of the progression. We start off on an F sharp power chord, 3 notes, over on the 9th fret of the A string, like this. Okay, and then we go to an A chord, or an A power chord, letting them ring. That's pretty self-explanatory. F sharp, A. Very easy. Now, the 3rd chord's not as obvious, but we'll get there. We're actually going here, 9th fret, perfect 4th interval. Alright, and then eventually going to an E octave. Alright, now the E octave I'm going to say is definitely an E. So the first 2 chords and the last chord are pretty easy to figure out. The F sharp is the 1, the A is the flat 3, or the relative major to the F sharp minor. This 3rd chord, I don't know yet, we'll have to figure that out in a couple seconds. Here is going to be the flat 7th chord. So 1, flat 3, blah blah, flat 7. Now let's figure out what that blah 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 is. We're on a perfect 4th interval, okay? But we have the notes B and E. Alright, now a lot of things can be said about this. Now, as we go further along this, this bridge section, we're going to find out a lot more about what this means, okay? Now I'm going to say, right now, right out of the gate, we are now in a 2nd inversion E chord. Once again, Cliff Burton giving us 2nd inversion chords. What a ragamuffin, a crazy man. So basically we have the same flat 7 chord, but just in 2nd inversion, it's a 6/4 chord. So 1, flat 3, flat 7, 6/4, flat 7. Alright, so that's what we're going to keep in mind for this entire bridge. Remember, 30 frickin' times. Now the guitar happening on top of these first 4 cycles of the progression, it's actually pretty easy. It's a very atmospheric effect, so put a lot of reverb on it and a little delay trail as well. Is this Smells Like Teen Spirit? Is it? Is it Smells Like Teen Spirit? I don't think it is. I think it's Orion. But kind of sounds like Smells Like Teen Spirit. Maybe Kurt Cobain ripped off Metallica. Who knows? I think he was a fan of the band at one point. But once again, this is just the 5th and the root of an F sharp minor chord, so it makes perfect sense. Then we come right up to here. That's a C sharp. That's the 5th. Okay? 5th, root, 5th. Nothing crazy here. And then we do this little, like, a little bend. You want to add a little bit of feeling into it. It's not a very large bend. It's actually more of like a quarter step with a little vibrato. And that's actually hitting the note D sharp, which is very interesting because that is the natural 6th of an F sharp minor chord. So that's the Dorian mode. That's legitimately what's going on there. That's the Shine On You Crazy Diamond interval. Right? But here, on an F sharp. And we're hitting that in a really high octave, letting the delay trail take over. And it goes around to do that really high 23rd fret again. And then there's another guitar on the bottom of it doing volume swells. So let's check those out. This guitar starts off on the 9th fret of the A string, okay? Just fading in an F sharp, and then a C sharp, F sharp, and then eventually we're going to a C sharp down the octave to an A, alright? So F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, A. And that's how it goes. Just listen to how the recording goes, just what I played before, and that's the rhythm. Alright, enough dilly-dallying with the reverb pedal. The next section introduces a 3-part guitar harmony that's sure to leave a buttery smooth residue all over your life. As the bass continues along the same path, each of these 3 guitars contributes a different note to an F sharp minor triad. That is our new key center, that is our 1 chord, so it's a very important chord. The F sharp minor triad in some way, shape, or form. Now, an F sharp minor triad is built off of an F sharp, an A, and a C sharp, or root, flat 3rd, and 5th. So remember that as I reference it as we go. So let's build this guitar harmony from the ground up. Alright, so I'm going to start with the lowest voicing and then move up to middle and high. There are 3 total voicings, and I tried to organize it so there's no extra overdubs going in and out. Now they do weave in and out of each other, so certain parts are going to be playing certain things by themselves as it progresses, but I will specify what part we're on each time. This is the first layer, the bottom layer, alright? And we start off bending the 11th fret of the A string like this. Just like that. No vibrato, just totally smooth, buttery smooth note. Alright, now that's going into the A, the note A. That's the flatted 3rd of the F sharp minor chord, okay? So right off the bat, we're starting off with a first inversion, because this is the bottom layer. Then we do a bend release, and then come back into an F sharp after that. Now that's going from 9th, 7th to 9th. Alright, so the notes that we have so far are flat 3rd to 2 to 1, flat 7, and root. One more time, nice and slow, the bottom layer. And you have to slide out at the end there, don't forget that. Okay, now on to the second layer, or the middle voice. This one starts out with a full step bend instead of a half on the D string. So from the 9th fret, as if we're playing the 11th fret, but we're bending a whole step like this. Try not to get that gravel in there, but you know what I mean. And then we do the same deal, same exact rhythm, but we're playing different notes, different intervals. So this is a B bending up to a C sharp. Alright, now that's going up to the perfect 5th of the F sharp minor chord, and then going to the 4th with that pull off, flatted 3rd, 2 to flatted 3rd. Alright? Real slow again. And of course, sliding out at the very last second. And last but not least, we get the most audible harmony, which is the top harmony. This one focuses on the root F sharp, and we're at the E at the 9th fret of the G string, okay, like this. Ready? E bending into F sharp. And then we come down here to the 6th fret of the G to the 4th. That is C sharp going to B. Alright, so that's now the 5th of the F sharp minor chord. So we're resolving onto the 5th. Now this is basically a first inversion F sharp minor triad going between an E triad and then resolving back to the F sharp minor root position. So watch this. We're going between F sharp minor in first inversion, going to an E in first inversion, back, and then an F sharp minor in root position going to an E in root position. So really, we're dancing between the root and the flat 7th chord. One more time, check it out. Sounds pretty cool when you play it with just one guitar, but that's the idea we're getting across with 3. Awesome. We continue our journey through Orion's peculiar smelling belt, a little cabbagey in here, onto the next 8 cycles of the progression, which brings about some unique ideas, but keeps this F sharp minor idea pretty much the same. But you'll see what I mean. The first time around is an extra note being added at the end of that harmony. Very subtle, but very effective. Here's the low part. Same bends. This note's coming down to a C sharp. That is the perfect 5th of the F sharp minor chord, putting it in 2nd inversion. Pretty damn cool. The middle part follows a similar idea, but with a different note. Check it out. You gotta be really firm. Dun, 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 like you're a classical musician playing the piano. Bum, bum, bum. That's on the root note. Okay, so we have perfect 5th and root so far. Sounds pretty cool together when you play it like that. And then we have to hit the high part, okay, which doesn't do anything crazy either, just different notes. Hitting the flatted 3rd of the F sharp minor chord. Let's hear what all that sounds like together. Check this out. Sounds pretty nice when you put it together like that. A 2nd inversion, F sharp minor triad being held throughout 3 distorted guitars. A very cool motion. Now, second time around we have some different variations happening here, okay? And we have a very long ending that we have to follow, which goes along with the progression. So check out this low part. Pretty cool. We have some lower notes coming into the fold, a lot more of a bass register, if I may add. So let's check out what we're doing here. So we're doing the exact same thing up top, half step bend, same 3 notes, but we continue on, okay? We continue on from that C sharp. We go to an A, B, B, A, G sharp, and we actually resolve onto the G sharp, which goes perfectly into the E major chord. So this is actually the major 3rd of that chord, putting it in 1st inversion. So it sounds pretty awesome when you put it all together. Alright, on to the middle section. Nothing to see here, all the same. Do the same deal, but here, change. Now, doesn't that final part sound a little bit like a 1960s bass line? Or even better yet, Sugar Pie Honey Bunch, right? Who would have known that Cliff Burton would have snuck that into such a composition like this? It's a really funny song, actually. But let's get back into this. So we start off exactly how we did. Nothing crazy. Hit those same 3 notes, but here we're going to the 7th fret to harmonize with the other part. And we come down to the 7th fret of the E string. Alright, we're actually doubling some of the lower portion. On this low 7th fret, we are doubling the... Instead, we're splitting off in 2 different directions. So this voicing, the middle voicing, goes upward, while the bottom voicing goes downward. Which will kind of sound a little bit like this. Sounds nice when you play them together. Of course, Of course, when that middle voice goes up and the lower voice goes down, it's called contrary motion, because guess what? They're moving contrary to one another. Now, here's what's going to happen for the next one. Here's the high part. It's very similar to what was going on here. We're actually going to double some notes of the middle section. Check this out. 7th fret. Pretty cool, right? So let's check out what we're doing. All those bends are the same, not going to go over those, but by the time we get to here, we go to the 7th fret again, doubling the middle part before it splits off again. And then here we're coming up to a G sharp, which is where the low part ends, but it's where this one begins, okay? So another sort of example of contrary motion. Actually, it winds up being one. We go like this. We're going up. Now, if you remember, the bass line went down, right? Sounds pretty nice when you play it together like that. How many times am I going to say that exact same sentence? There's so many harmonies in here doing the same crap over and over again. Just kidding. This is an incredible song, an incredible piece of music. I will never talk down on Orion. Never. Alright? But we're moving up. That's what you gotta understand. The next bit that comes in is actually a solo line. It's a solo guitar, but it's the middle harmony that breaks off from the rest. And it goes like this. Ready? So it's a nice little pentatonic thing going on there. We're starting on the 9th fret of the A string, muting the 7th and 9th again like this, then going 7, 9 on the D string, sliding to the 11th, back down, and then adding a quick 16th note mute. You gotta make sure you add that in there. It makes all the difference. So, one more time. Then right down to the root, and then once again resolving into the flatted 3rd where it should be. On that final note, the other two guitars surrounding that actually come in right on that last note. So when the middle guitar goes like this, and lands on that flat 3rd harmony, the other two guitars land on their harmony. So the low part's going to land on the 9th fret here for the root, and the high one is going to land here, which makes it sound very, very, very nice, and everything is rejoined together in perfect harmony, no pun intended. Now, the next part is just a variation on what we heard at the beginning and what we've been hearing all along, plus with the little tag that we just went over now. So let's play the low part. We're going to gloss over this quickly. The low part here. Another double bend. Cool. All the same at that ending as well, but you want to make sure you get those bends right. The important part is this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Once you get that, the whole variation is basically over. Let's do the middle part now. Ready? Alright, once again, that last part's not important. One more time on those bends. Check it out. Pretty cool, and it makes it sound awesome when all three of them are in sync like this. Here's the high part. Very nice. Very cool, very cool. The next 6 times through the progression offer us some unique variation, okay, once again. Now, this time the low voice is what's going to be going rogue through a lot of this, okay? So that voice splits off, does its own thing, and the other ones come back in to surround it with some beautiful harmony as it's moving along. So let's check out what that sounds like, and I'll meet you on the other side. Notice how not all of the voices are playing 100% of the time. A lot of composers get caught in this trap as if they have to keep the harmonies moving in the same direction, and playing 100% of the time with one another. That's simply not true. That is not and should not be the case. The low voice in this instance actually starts doing this before the two guitars really get going with this melody. And it happens at the end of the last lick we were playing. Remember this? We resolve a whole step from G sharp into F sharp. That is the root note. So now it's acting more like a bass line, alright? Which it is the low part, so it should be like a bass line. This just helps to transition us more smoothly into this area. Give it a little more backbone for the two guitars up top. The next guitar that comes in can be seen as the B section melody, okay? So we're done with that first A section with the F sharp minor harmony. Now we have a single note line playing more of a neoclassical type of idea, which we're going to enjoy more of as it goes on, and it does progress into an even more beautiful flurry of neoclassicism. But we come into this, ready? Check this out. It's just a beautiful sounding melody, right? And it's just a single note line. It's the high part that comes off of the, well, the high harmony, okay? So we're going like this. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 7, da, 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 da. Now a lot of these notes go along the 1 or the tonic chord and the 5 chord. All right, which is the, or really the flat 7th chord, I would say. We're kind of in A major at this. We're playing something that's more in line with A major. That's the 5th and the major 3rd of A major, and then this. That's the 7th, the flat 7th of the E chord, right? Resolving into the major 3rd, just like we're used to seeing in the previous section. So one more time. Now it's worth noting on that very last note, noting on that note, you get it? On that C sharp, the other harmony, the middle harmony actually comes in right there. And it just hits the 7th fret down below to harmonize it. Just two guitars though. The low guitar is not included in that, which is kind of interesting. The main melody line also has some subtle differences at the beginning. It adds some more pickup notes like this. And another subtle difference that isn't really that subtle is a quick hammer-on and pull-off before going to the 6th fret of the G. Watch that again. And then continuing on. All the same stuff beyond that point, but make sure you get that. And nice and fast, too. This harmony then continues to follow along with the main line with those pickup notes. With that fast hammer on and pull off as well. You don't want to forget about that because that's super cool to add in there. One more time. And then just continuing as if nothing else happened. On the final note of that sequence, the low part then comes back in to fill out the harmony. So remember how it was a 2-part harmony just before? Here, it's going to be a 3-part harmony once again. Pretty cool. So the low part comes back in after being dormant for a while. And then eventually what winds up happening is we play this little F sharp minor pentatonic lick like this. With the other two notes still ringing out on top. And then we do this. Really simple, 2nd fret, 4th fret. Really nothing to say about it except it's a great compositional move to have the low part drop out and then come back in for the very last moment of this section. And like I said before, during that pentatonic lick, the middle and high harmonies are still holding out their respective notes to give that same atmosphere to that pentatonic lick, okay? Now this prepares us to enter the next section, which I'm going to call Orion's Gall Bladder. Let's check that out. Once again, we have a single guitar line moving through the progression, but this time with arpeggios instead. We start out on a basic root position F sharp minor triad just like this after a big old slide. Alright, so the first time around we're starting on that root note and we're using this position. 9th fret of the A, 7th fret of the D, and then 6th fret of the G. That creates an F sharp minor triad. We're going like this. You want to make sure you're popping those notes out when they happen. You want to mute this. You want to mute those two notes and then not mute this. And then mute the notes in between. Ready? Not mute, 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 not mute, not mute. Okay? And then we come into the A chord like this. That's just an A triad that goes right along with the chords. F sharp minor, A major. And then resolving into this, well not really resolving, but coming into the E7 chord. That's just a straight up E dominant 7th arpeggio in that position. Okay, E, G sharp, B, and D. That gives you 1, 3, 5, flat 7. Beautiful, beautiful sound. One more time, slow. F sharp minor, A major, E7. So, going back to the beginning, when I explained the function of Cliff Burton's bass line, we now have an E7 in second inversion, so even more crunchiness going on within this part. Now let's take a look at the second half that happens. It's a very subtle difference on this voice. Instead of starting on the 9th fret on the root, we're going to go right to the 7th fret, because when we end this, we're going to go a half step resolution onto the 7th fret. Alright, so we're not on the root anymore, we're on the flat 3rd, okay? So, and we're going to do that every single time we come back. Check that out. Alright, always land on that except the first time. On the third time around, a harmony guitar is introduced on the top voice. And there's also another variation we have to cover on the fourth time around. There are so many variations in this song, it's insane. So before we get to the high voice, let's just go over the variation that happens the fourth time around. This adds a little bit of Hetfield 16th at the end, and I know it's James Hetfield. I know James Hetfield is really the mastermind here. So we're going like this. Check it out. So not a crazy difference, but still, it's enough to hear it in the track. We're going like this. When we hit the 7th fret of the G, 1 and a 2, bom, 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 bom. And we're changing the order of that arpeggio a little bit, breaking it up in a different way, just to break up the monotony. This is a very long composition, so we have to change things a little bit to keep it interesting. Now with all that in mind, let's take a look at the high harmony. Now this one comes in at the 11th fret of the D string, and we're playing what looks like an A major chord, which is pretty interesting, but let's check this out. So we have 11th, 12th on the A with the mutes, and then pop this 9th out, 9th fret of the G, alright? So that just looks like an A major arpeggio. And we're going all the way up to the root up here. So this is just a straight up A major triad, beautiful, which works for F sharp and A, by the way. So, and then that goes here. Now that's very interesting because that F sharp is actually the 9th of the E chord. So this is really a dominant 7th with a 9th. It's a very cool harmony to put in there. So, 9th, and then going right down the dominant 7th arpeggio from there, okay? So we have basically G sharp on the bottom, B, D natural, that's a flat 7th, and F sharp, which is the 9th, okay? So we come down there, but instead of doing the arpeggio like this, we don't do that. I think this is a Kirk Hammett move, actually, because it doesn't really fit with the part, but it sounds fine, I guess. We do this, 11, 12, and then 9th on the D, 11th, 9th and 11th. Be careful about 9 and 11. Alright, now that clashes with the lower harmony in a way. It actually creates some dissonance, and you can listen to that closely for yourself. But we come back to repeat, and we have to do that variation. Alright, so we have to do that 16th note het, and then back up the same thing. One more time, all the way through those 2 times. Ready? Beautiful. 16th. The next bit follows a very similar idea, but with much longer note values, allowing for the guitars to take a little bit of a break this time, and for Cliff Burton to take over much more angrily on the bass part. Still the same progression though. Check this out. So now the roles are reversed, okay? Cliff is playing a bunch of busy arpeggios over the top, which are the same chord progression, by the way, so I'm not going to go over that too in depth. And the guitars are now with much longer notes with what Cliff was doing before. So, role reversal. Very cool. As for the guitars, we have yet another set of harmonies to deal with. A 2-part harmony once again. And basically, we're starting in the same spot, same range, but we're outlining arpeggios with much longer notes. Beautiful sounding thing. It's basically just the same thing 4 times, but we're starting over here on the 7th fret of the D. That's the flat 3rd of the F sharp chord. Then we go down to the root, and then we leap all the way up to the flat 7th on the 9th fret of the G. All right, so that's an F sharp minor 7th chord. Then resolve it over to the C sharp. That's the major 3rd of the A. All right, so totally consonant here. So, and then just playing the root and the 5th of the A chord, which is the same notes that we were using for F sharp minor. So if you extend by putting an A major chord on top of an F sharp minor, that's what it creates, an F sharp minor 7th chord. Okay, so then we come to the flat 7th of the E, resolving to the root and going all the way down to the G sharp. Now what's interesting is that there's a little bit of dissonance there, because the D and a G sharp is a tritone away. Alright? Almost sounds like a Primus song. Primus before it was cool, but totally hidden under a layer of obscurity, just like Cliff Burton would have loved it. And then we finish that off with a nice resolution coming back into the A like this. Alright, so that's basically utilizing the 5th and the 6th of the E chord, or better yet, the 2 and the 3 of the A. So, it's like an out of order Mary Had a Little Lamb. Kind of sounds stupid when you play it like that. I think there's a reason why Mary Had a Little Lamb is so iconic and well known, because it doesn't do 2, 3, 1, bum, 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 bum. It goes 3, 2, 1, bum, 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 and that's all we need at the end of the day. The high harmony follows the same rhythmic idea, but we have leaps and bounds beyond what I would expect from Metallica, and literal leaps and bounds, okay? So a lot of these intervals move in very strange motions that I'm not used to seeing from especially Mr. Hammett or Mr. Hetfield for that matter. You guys are being really adventurous on this one. I think Cliff Burton's influence is rubbing off on you, isn't it? Don't rub off anything on me. We start off in the 11th fret just like we did before. And wow, we got to jump a full octave on that first part. And once again, just changing the note. Now let's check that out again. So we got this full octave jump coming to that note. Alright, so this is F sharp minor. This is the 5th, the minor 3rd, up to the minor 3rd, up the octave. But it still sounds like an A major chord because, well, we're playing an A major arpeggio. Even though the chord is an F sharp, it's kind of hard to escape this idea. We're definitely playing a major chord. We then resolve it down to here, which is the 5th of the A chord. So finally we're actually on the A chord. Then we do this leap again, which is root, root at that point. Alright, and that's the 9th of the E chord, of course. A very cool E chord. It's a second inversion 9th chord, which is kind of crazy. But this only has 2 variations, okay? That's the first variation like this. Ready? Going up to the 10th fret, coming from here. And I'll circle that on the screen. The next variation goes like this. All the same stuff. And then we do this. Just to have a little 2-3-1 on the E. Just like we had a 2-3-1 on the A, we're doing a 2-3-1 on the E. For a nice little resolution. It's beautiful. And it sounds like I should be picking flowers in a meadow full of excellent energy. So here we go. One more time. That's variation number 2. So let's hear all that slow. Variation number 1. With a double note on that 9th, of course. And variation number 2. And once we finish that section, we actually do have to hold out both of those harmony notes because it bleeds right into the next section, which, by the way, is another guitar solo. This is guitar solo number 2 of Orion. Are you ready to go? We're moving up a little bit further up to Orion's chest hair, I think. Hopefully we don't get a nip slip. The rhythm guitar is actually very simple for this part. It's just 4 power chords that loop around 4 times. Start off on a high F sharp on the 9th fret of the A, and A on the 12th fret, so we're going up high, and E on the 7th fret, and then down to a C sharp down at the 4th fret. That is a 1, flat 3, or a relative major, flat 7, and a 5. C sharp. Okay, now on to the solo part. I'm going to split this up into 4 different sections. Section number 1 goes like this. We start over at the 14th fret of the low E string. That's an F sharp. So we're essentially going up an F sharp minor scale for most of this in a very specific pattern. So I'll show you what that is. We start on the 14th fret of the E, then go 11, 12, 14 on the A, then to the 11th on the D. Okay, and at that point we come down 1 note, 1 string I should say, onto the A string, go 11, 12, 14, up again. Alright, so once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then down 1 again, right? We basically come down the 11th fret of the D string this time, and then all the way up the pattern until we hit the top. Alright, so real slow again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down, and then all the way up. Now all of these are notes within the F sharp minor scale properly, right? Almost said pentatonic. It's not the pentatonic scale. The proper F sharp minor scale, which would be F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D, E, and F sharp. Alright? Now once we get to the top, those notes continue, but when we're on the high E string, we hit the 15th fret instead of the 14th. Now that's very interesting. Now, this is actually an F sharp Phrygian idea. Alright, the G is the flatted 2. Once again, remember we heard that on top of the B? Well, I guess Kirk Hammett is repeating himself here, rather unintentionally, I believe. Now, that G, I think, just signifies more of an E minor idea. He's used to playing the E minor scale so often during this song that, well, that's what it comes from. So we can't give Kirk Hammett too much credit for this theoretical coolness, but we're going to give him a little bit of credit, all right? He did come up with it after all. So one more time, real slow, starting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. And then all the way up, slide positions until you reach the top. And then a little couple 17s at the end there, which I didn't pick, but you should pick. You got to pick those. The next lick utilizes some nice phrasing within an F sharp minor pentatonic scale. Check this out, ready? Very nice and almost bluesy sounding, but it also sounds like it's coming from the Orient, the Far East. Alright, we're in Eastern Asia here. That's what it kind of sounds like, with a little bluesiness in there. So a bluesy East Asia kind of feel going on. Now, start off on that 17th fret. And we got to do this. We're doing a pick, pick, and then a hammer pull from the 14th to the 17th back to the 14th. Now that establishes the F sharp minor pentatonic. We come down, scale, right, just all the way down the scale and up a couple more notes, and then we do this. Now that actually outlines the C sharp minor chord. Alright, so the power chord is C sharp minor. It actually does a C sharp minor 7 like this. Now that's totally unintentional, I believe that, because this is a very common move in F sharp minor, but hey, it is there and it's worth pointing out in this analysis. We continue along with a more melodic idea, moving away from the pentatonic scale. A very nice melodic sounding line with some legato and different techniques. We start on the 7th fret of the B string, which is an F sharp, and we just scale up the scale. Couple staccato notes coming down, and then we do this. 2 legato runs, 3 notes per string starting on the G string. 6, 7, 9, then 7, 9, 10. Just like that. And then we do a little hammer on and pick from the 7th to 9th to the 7th on the high E string. Now those are the positions. Like I said, this is just the F sharp minor scale proper. This is the same idea except we're starting on a C sharp, and that's just legato runs. And then here, that actually lands melodically on the flat 7th of a C sharp minor chord. So that's actually kind of crazy that that happens, and it happens twice. That C sharp minor chord is sort of like the melodic groundstone of this whole thing, and I honestly don't believe that Kirk intentionally did that, which makes it even cooler in a way. Coming straight off of that with no break, we hit the 4th and final pass through the progression. This one looks almost like a sus4 shape. Check it out. Very cool sounding. Now, like I said, we're coming down this shape that almost looks like an E sus4, starting on the 7th fret where we left off. Right there is the 5th, 4th, 3rd of an E major chord. Alright, now of course we're in F sharp minor, but there is an E chord in the progression, so that actually checks out. And we are going down an E major arpeggio right there, so we can call this an E sus4 lick, which is pretty cool. So, and then we come into F sharp minor pentatonic once again to end it off like this. Some nice bluesy bends in there. 2, 4, bend, release, pull, back in, and then I would suggest using all down picks for that section because it gives it a little more oomph. It also lets you get those little pinch harmonics in between there as well, so be sure that you're very pinchy, very tight, and a lot of downstrokes can be used for this entire solo. Actually, all downstrokes can, believe it or not. Let's get that whole solo slowly. Ready? Overall, some very good melodic sensibilities in that solo. We start off with a very wide F sharp minor scale going all the way up, right? Turning into a Phrygian scale at the top. Some nice Far East pentatonics. And then we go into something that David Gilmour from Pink Floyd might play. with this shape especially. And then capping it off with some very nice blues licks in F sharp minor pentatonic. Now that's pretty damn awesome. Now, you know what's even more awesome? A damn bass solo by Cliff Burton with full distortion. And not just any bass solo. There's 2 bass guitars being harmonized in this section, and we're going to go over what's happening in that. So check this out. We are reaching new heights just like Mark Twain and his hot air balloon full of piss. Check this out. Now for this bass solo, I'm not going to be focusing so much on the technical side of playing it physically. There are plenty of tutorials on YouTube that you can look at, so this is not the place for that. But I will be putting the tab up on the screen for anybody who's curious, so don't worry about that. And I will be doing a full-blown harmonic analysis, starting with the very first lick that is played, a bendy lick that's harmonized with 2 bass guitars. Check it out. This bend is consonant to both the E minor and G chords that start off the progression. Check this out. Here's the low part. Ready? So you're bending up into a B. Alright, so that's the 5th of the E minor chord, and then you're coming down into a G. Alright, so the G is the root of the G, of course. So 5th of the E minor, root of the G. Perfect. The high part does a little switcheroo. We actually start on a G way up top. We got to go all the way up here. Ready? That's a G going down to an E. That's a Re, Me, Do, or flat 3, 2 to 1. That is also consonant with both chords, but there's something interesting going on with the G chord. So the G is over the E, so that's the flatted 3rd of the E minor chord. The E lands on the G. Now what's interesting about that is it creates a 6th interval. So technically we're playing a G6 on top of the G chord. Now that G power chord is an extension of the E minor. E minor is E, G, and B. That's 1, flat 3, and 5. If you put a 7th on top of that, flat 7th, it's a D. Well, guess what? G, B, D is a G major triad. So E, G, B, D is like a big E minor triad. Think of it like that. And you can mix and match those in any way that you want. You could also think of this as being an inverted E minor chord, whatever. But G6 works fine enough. The next lick goes through a descending pattern with a high pedal point on top and eventually resolves on a chord note. We also have a flurry of hammer-ons and pull-offs in there. Now that first part is basically resolving down to an F sharp, which would be the 3rd of a D major chord or the 5th of a B minor chord. So B minor and D, just like E minor and G, are harmonic extensions of one another. If you have a B minor triad, B, D, F sharp, and extend it to the flatted 7th, you get a B minor 7th, which is also a D major chord on top of a B minor chord. So that's kind of cool, but it applies in this situation because we are resolving onto the F sharp, which would be the major 3rd of the D or the perfect 5th of the B minor. Now the high pedal point, that's actually an E, which is the root note, which makes sense, we're in the key of E minor, but it's a 9th of the D chord. So that's kind of cool. It's like a D add 9. And then we scale up. Now that's dealing with the flat 6 interval on top of an E minor chord. We're back at the beginning of the progression with that. So this is C, and then resolving to the G on top of the G chord. So that's almost, well, that is harmonically perfect. I like that. The next lick breaks from what I was just saying and opts to use a G sus4 shape over the D and B minor chords. Check this out. So basically we're using all the notes of a G sus4 like this. If you play a G on the bottom, you can hear it a lot more, and that's basically what's going on. It's just happening on top of a D, which could be D and 4 or sus4, or B minor with a flatted 6. Alright, so all of these notes have different functions depending on what the chord is underneath. The next section returns to that harmonic extension concept that I described earlier, But this time the bass is back with a vengeance. Two basses being harmonized and lots of arpeggios going on. Check it out. Such a cool and signature sound by bassist Cliff Burton. Let's break it down. The low part starts on a descending E minor triad starting on B, okay? So we're at the 16th, 12th, and 14th here, like this. Ready? That is an E minor triad over the E, alright? The next goes down to this. That's a C triad on top of the G. Okay, interesting. And then that's a D major triad on the D. That makes perfect sense. And then that's a B minor triad. Okay, so going along perfectly with the chord progression. The high part starts up here with a G major shape. Then E minor. Then F sharp diminished. Okay, and then D major. Now once again our harmonic extensions are coming into play here. This top one, the G major chord, is happening on top of the E chord, which if you stack a G chord on top of an E, what does it create? An E minor 7. That's right, it absolutely does. So that's an E minor 7th chord. And then going on to this, the E minor over G, like I said before, that's basically a G6 or an E minor in first inversion. This F sharp diminished chord, now what's going on with that? Well, that happens on top of the D chord, which, by the way, creates a dominant 7th chord when you stack an F sharp diminished on top of that. So, it'll sound like this. Pretty cool. Sounds oddly bluesy as well. We're getting jazz blues all over the place right here. And then that D chord can be easily explained on top of the B by just being a minor 7th. Alright, a D chord on top of a B is a B minor 7. Everything checks out in that regard. So here it is slow again. G major, E minor, F sharp diminished, D major. Now the fun does not end there. We have another lick where both basses are playing the entire way through. And it's a flurry. It's a hurricane. It's a goddamn windstorm destroying your entire fucking house. And it's going to go like this. Are you ready? Check it out. Now this is possibly the most convoluted section, as we've opted out of the nice arpeggios and the easy theory, and we're just going full blaze on an E minor scale in whatever direction we feel like going. The low part has some pretty cool stuff going on at the end. Check this out. See how it dips into that lower register right there? Now, let's check out some of these notes. So we're going basically the 5th and 4th of the E, and the flat 3rd, and just going down the scale. That's all E minor right there. But we skip down to this. Now that's pretty awesome. That's basically an E minor 9 arpeggio, but played like this. Which has the 5th, the B, the flat 7th, that's the D, back down, and then the F sharp coming in there. Giving it a really cool sound, a lot of dissonance in this as well. And the top part is just some jibber jabber going on the E minor scale. I'll play it just in case. Ready? Watch. Just a bunch of jibber jabber on the E minor scale. There's really nothing to be said except it ends on the flat 3rd of the E minor chord that is hit, ba-bum. Okay, so after that we can finally say that we understand Cliff Burton's madness with his 2-part bass harmony solo with the distortion and the wah and all the classical influences you can possibly ask for. Man, we really are getting down to the mind of this genius. Now, what's kind of funny is that a lot of this music, let's face it, was made by the bigwigs, the guys with the powdered wigs, the aristocracy. I always find it really funny when guys that look like they rolled out from under a pile of beer cans and dirt have very high functioning brain activity and can do magical things like this. Things that the aristocracy would find acceptable, right? a rolling out of a can of PBR is not acceptable in the British aristocracy, or any aristocracy for that matter. And I see that Cliff Burton has officially brought this to the common folk. He brought what was only available to the higher class, rich people, and has brought it down to the common folk, the people, the peasantry. A true American hero, if I must say. We got to get that guy's head up on Mount Rushmore. Anyway, it's been a little bit of a while since we got to Orion's heavy side. We now finally get to return back to some of the heavy riffs, and we're going to prepare ourselves for another guitar solo that comes in. But let's just check out these chords that transition us into that. So it sounds simple enough, but the time changes are what make this interesting. Right at the end of the bass solo, we hit a 1 and with a measure of 2. So check this out. 1 and 2. And then right into the next note. So, now, believe it or not, this is actually in a measure of 3. So it's a measure of 2, followed by a measure of 3, followed by measure of 4, which then continues on. But yeah, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, down, right into the B minor solo. Oh my God, we're gonna get into it right about now. Let's get into this final solo with the rhythm guitar and the lead guitar playing. We're back into that B minor riff with the crazy descending chromatic lines. Let's check that out. Bam! The rhythm section during this solo is pretty much the same as it was earlier in the song, minus 2 differences. First is within the drums. Lars is playing on every single downbeat the entire time, making a little more bam, 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 bam. That's what he's doing the whole time. The guitar side, we're basically just doing a longer version of the progression we saw, that B minor progression with the chromatic lines. Check it out, ready? B, A, F sharp, repeat, then down, F sharp, E, then back again, and we do the entire thing twice. Alright, so that's all you really have to remember, is that we're doing the entire thing 2 times instead of basically 1 time through like it was last time, and there's no held out chord going into a lengthy bridge of PBR or anything like that. So just like the rhythm guitar part, the guitar solo is also in B minor and uses a lot of pentatonic stuff this time around. So starting off with a lot of bends on the 10th fret of the B string, that's basically the flat 7th going to the root, so nothing to really explain there. So we go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, and 3. You see that? So in that rhythm right there. We end that off with a pull-off like this into this series of bends and pull-offs as well. So that's more like a Chuck Berry style lick. You want to bend at the 9th fret of the G string, go into the B, 9, 7, 10 pull, and then immediately into a whole step bend on the 10th. And then 10 pull again. And then do that twice. Now basically you can do this with mostly downstrokes except for the first part. Watch. The first and the last part. So down, up, down, 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 up. And fast. Down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, 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 up. Oh, that's the way you gotta do it. Big time. We then go into the next lick, which is more of something inspired by Jimmy Page. So it sounds like something that would be in Stairway to Heaven, but it's Orion by Metallica. So check it out. We're gonna pull off from the 10th fret of the E string to the 7th fret, like this. And then barring the B string to get that extra crunch. And you want to let that ring a little bit. And you go like this. Alright, so 16th note, triple it. Alright, so a faster one at the end. And you want to pick it like this. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. Alright, sorry, I said down on that one. Try it again. Down, up, down, up. So basically every time you hit the B string, you're going to do an upstroke. Nothing too crazy there. The second pass through the progression gives us far more B minor pentatonic pull-offs, but this time it feels like a throwback to Kill 'Em All almost. We start off with this rhythmic bending like this. But we got to sneak another one of those Jimmy Page-esque arpeggios right in there. So check it out. Bend, bend, release, and then Jimmy Page arpeggio. That's a B minor arpeggio, by the way. And then you do this again. Cool. And then basically we hit this incredibly long pentatonic run coming out of it, which sounds like this. So that's a lot of pull-offs. Let's go over what we got to do. You basically want to pick up into the measure. So this is on the and of 4, and then the next one is on beat 1, and that's where it really starts. Now each one of these are going to do a double, so you're going to go double, 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 and then blues 9, 8, 7, 5, double, double, bottom, down, real slow, double, 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 and you got to make sure you follow it exactly, otherwise you're not going to land on that D, that 5th fret at the right time. And it's all about where you land on that D, as we have learned through life. And we get to follow that with yet more pentatonic runs. Check this out. That's right, that sounds straight out of Kill 'Em All too. So we're going da-da, sliding with the ring into 5-7, that's the root, into the 5th right there, double 5, and then you do another slide going from the 7th to the 9th, and then right up here, 7, 9, that's resolving into the root note. So real slow. Pretty nice. You want to add a little attitude into that as well. And before we can get finished saying Rick Brick Bidda Shamana Moo, we got to go into the next part, which goes way up into this octave. Now that's kind of crazy because we got to come right out of this low one at this speed. That's pretty quick to get up there, right? To go from here to... Now, you got to check that out right there. We have a rhythm, not really a rhythm, an interval that we have here. So we're up at the 21st fret and the 19th fret. Now that's a B to an F sharp. That's just a perfect 5th. This is all pentatonic stuff. And then we go like this. Bend the 21st here. And then up, you're going to bend that 22nd fret at a full step bend. That's the root once again. And then down. You basically do the same thing, bending at the 22nd of the E, coming down to the 19th once again, and then just to finish that off. Then after that we have some repetitive bends and unison holds that go like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's 2 measures total on that. You're bending the 22nd fret in the B all the way up, and then holding the 19th fret static like this. And then you go into this nice Chuck Berry style thing, which we're used to seeing out of Kirk Hammett. That's basically 4 times through that as well. And you basically got to get a nice big bend to end it off right after that. Just like that. And basically, in order to do that, you want to do down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, like this. Down, 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 yeah, and then bend big on that 22nd fret. Down, up, down is going to get you through all of this, okay? Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, pull off, down, up, pull off. That's how you get it that fast. This is all pentatonic, by the way. That's all it is. The final lick just includes more B minor pentatonic stuff, although it does include some B minor scale notes proper, but repetitive pull-off stuff. So check this out, and hammer-ons as well. So we're all the way down at the 2nd fret of the G now, hammering into the 4th. Ready for this lick? So all of that broken down, let's check it out. So hammering from the 2nd to the 4th, and then hitting a double 3rd fret on the B string. All right, this is basically a B minor 7. Okay, more pentatonic stuff. Flat, flat 3rd, then do it again. Add a little pinch in there too if you can, and then basically what we're going to do is we're going to go 3-2 pull off like this to the 4th fret of the G, and you're going to go pull off, pick, 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 pull off, pick. And it's the same rhythm that we use for this, except we're down here. And you do that a total of 2 times. You want to speed up gradually as you get to the end. And then we do something similar after that, except we're on the 4th fret and the 2nd fret of the G going to the 4th fret of the D, like this. And then ending eventually on the 2nd fret of the D string. Now, check this out, ready? Here it is slow, same exact picking pattern. Pull, pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull. Once again, all B minor pentatonic stuff, but we're ending on the note E. But guess what? The final section of the song is in the key of E. So we modulate perfect out of B minor right into that E, even though it feels like it kind of ends abruptly. Check it out. Right, it kind of feels like it comes too soon, but it actually comes at the perfect moments, okay? And that's on top of that riff. Before we get to that riff, let me play this entire solo for you slowly. Ready? Here we go, from the beginning. That last note of the solo then fades into a more aggressive version of a prior riff that we've heard before. Please enjoy the outro of Orion. Here we go. This outro riff signifies that we've made it all the way to the top of Orion's noggin. That's right, Orion's head. Very, 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 very far away. Approximately 7.642 times 10 to the 15th power miles away from where we should be. So let's check out what we're dealing with. It's a very familiar riff, it just has some extra chugs in between. Check this out. Nice. Basically, want to keep it really tight. And this continues until it fades out. Alright, so you basically just keep on going. I'm not sure how many times it goes, maybe like 16 times. And there's really nothing that happens above it. They just riff out on this the whole time, just thrashing out with the occasional drum fill here and there. There's really nothing crazy going on at the ending of this, actually. Very basic, which is kind of crazy. You figured they would have come up with something. Maybe their budget was running out. Who knows? Maybe their budget was running a little bit low. Metallica ran out of money. Remember, this was still early on. This is their 3rd album, so they didn't have that capital that they got now. You know, big Metallica corporation running around playing Enter Sandman at football stadiums. That didn't exist at that point in time yet, all right? But with that said, you basically want to make sure it's totally tight. You want to palm mute everything in between, right? With that razor sharp precision accuracy, just like James Hetfield's right hand. And we don't have to worry about any crazy time changes either, which is also very nice. Well, folks, we finally made it through this entire journey, all the way from Orion's feet, through his belt, and up to the top of his head. And you know what they say, the way to a man's head is through his belt. Now, I don't write the rules here, I just observe reality as I see it. Thank you everybody for coming along this journey. It's been a wild one across 3 guitar harmonies in Orion. Orion's belt, his feet, his waist, his chest, his nips, his face, his everything. Orion's everything. We have been across every inch of Orion. I'm sure he's glad that we're done with this, because I think he was getting really annoyed and he was going to send some sort of cosmic cataclysm after me if I didn't stop. And I'd suggest that you keep going. You guys got to keep going, because you got to practice this. So you got to keep bothering Orion up there. He's there to be bothered, okay? He can only help you learn the guitar better. Just like I can only help you learn the guitar better. Alright, if you'd like to further support the channel, go to www.subscribestar.com/RomanOva Music. You can pledge any amount of money you want per month. The $20 option gets you access to the RomanOva Guitar Gym, which is an exclusive set of videos just for you, just for that level of patronage. So exclusive content there. Other than that, you can leave me a tip on my PayPal tip jar. You can even book lessons on my website, www.romanovamusic.com. Check out my music, check out all sorts of stuff. Alright everybody, we have one more song left to go on this series, Let's Learn Master of Puppets. And that is the 8th song. It starts with Damage, and it ends with Incorporated. We're going to be opening up an LLC of Extreme Damage. So you better get ready to write off some good stuff on your taxes. Alright? I'll see you next time, folks. Until then, Bunyan do.